Hello everybody and welcome to another installment of Swatching All My Art Supplies by You Family. As you can see, today I'm doing all my browns. I debated on whether or not I was going to do my browns, thinking that some people might find them boring, but I do have quite a lot of them, and I do know that there are a lot of fans of earth tones and browns out there. So, here they are, and let's get on with the swatching. Okay, starting as usual with the colored pencils. I have two different brands here. Most of what I have, as with my other videos that I've done with swatching, are these old school Prismacolors. I've had these since the late 80s, early 90s when I was in high school, and most of them have survived with me, so I have a lot of them. I have since been experimenting with other brands of colored pencils, and you'll see a couple of them here that we will get to, but let's get started. So the first one I'm going to do is 941, and it's called Light Umber. Never heard of a light umber before. I know there's burnt umber and raw umber. So starting off at the beginning of this, you might think that swatching browns is really going to be boring, but there's actually quite a variety in browns, and a lot of people really enjoy them. They remind us of like nature and maybe the autumn. We get to see more tree bark without the leaves, and bare dirt without grass, and pine cones and dying leaves. Okay, next I have 943, which is burnt ochre. It's a very warm reddish color. Sort of reminds me of a burnt sienna a little bit. But I think I have one that's called sienna, so I don't know, we'll see. Okie dokie. So this next one, I actually don't really 100% know what it is, because as you can see, I sharpened it from the wrong end. But from everything that I've looked online of the colors that were included in this set, and just going by like the number, like number order compared to like colors and stuff like that, because it's a warmer one, I think that this is 944 terracotta. I think. Now, it seems kind of red for me to be a terracotta. You'd think it would be more orange, but they don't always name things the way we think that they would be named. And like I said, it was my best guess. It's more like a chestnut brown to me, or like a hazelnut. Okay, so next we have 945 sienna brown. So we'll see how different it is from the one that I figure looks pretty sienna-ish. Okay, now we're into a couple of darker ones here. This is 947, and it is called Dark Umber. It's definitely very dark. It has a strange undertone to it. I can't describe it as either warm or cool because it sort of reads as maroon or a little purpley to me, which is right in the middle of red and blue. But it is very dark. Okay, last Prismacolor. It is 948, and this is called Sepia, or Sepia, however you'd like to pronounce it. I usually say sepia. Is it correct? I would say that this is accurately named. Fairly neutral, dull, brownish color. Okay, so as I mentioned, I had another brand here that I was trying, and it is by the Derwent brand, and it is their Color Soft range. And I have two colors here. One actually is called Lichen Green, C500, but I suppose it does have a greenish tint, but compared to all my other green art supplies, it just felt very brown. As you can see, it is very brown. Might have a little bit of a yellowy undertone, but it's not really what I would call green. Although I suppose if you compare it to some of the more warmer, reddier browns up there, it does read sort of green. Okay, last colored pencil. This is pale brown, and it is C530. A ridiculously sharp point on the end of this one. Not intentional, it just seemed to happen. Not for long. I like the way these feel better than the Prismacolors. Both in my hand, it's a little bit thicker, and also on the paper. I've tried quite a few different brands. I think one of my most favorite brands of color pencils is the Luminance line by Caran d'Ache, but they're ridiculously expensive here. So followed by that, I like the Polychromos line by Faber-Castell too. Okay, what shall we do next? I think I will move on to water-soluble things. I've got 4 water-soluble pencils here. These first 2 are both Derwent brand watercolors, and I got these. Ouch! It's really sharp. I got these as a set some time ago to play with and experiment, and I have experimented with them a little bit. They're not my favorite water-soluble colored pencil. They feel a little bit maybe student grade to me, like they feel like there's more binder than pigment type of feel to it, if that makes any sense to anybody. Oh, sorry, did I say that this was Golden Brown 59? Okay, now I get some water. Oops, sorry. I get some water. Paper towel. Water. And a watercolor brush. Where did it go? Just had it. Okay, there it is. It's much more vibrant and much more yellow when it's dissolved. Activated with water, however you want to say it. Much more yellow. I would definitely say golden now. Okay, the next Derwent one that I have here is Copper Beach 61. very crumbly, dry and crumbly, and I keep having to blow off little dusty pieces. Okay. This one goes much more orangey, much more red. Like their colors almost seem like they were intended to always be activated with water. It seems like their true potential comes out then, except for that the really light ones, it seems like the color just washes away. Okay, so this was another brand I was trying because like I said, these Derwent ones were feeling a little student grade to me. So I got a couple of these Faber-Castell ones. They're Elbrick Durer water pencils. This one is Burnt Sienna. The number is 283. And it feels softer right away. It doesn't feel so chalky and scratchy like the other one. It's not making as much like dust, or it's not crumbling as much, so that's good, I guess. This doesn't look very burnt sienna to me though. Like this is what I'm used to a burnt sienna looking like. Let's see how it activates. Ooh. It activated way, like super quick. And now it looks like a burnt sienna. It's creamier feeling than the Derwent ones. Yeah, it's like they never intended these to be used as pencil form. Okay, last sort of pencil here. Now this is also by Derwent, but this is their Graphitint, and it is a graphite pencil, a water-soluble graphite pencil tinted with pigment, and the color of this one is Cool Brown, number 15. I have a few of these, I think maybe half a dozen that I bought in a set, and I've been swatching them along with all my other materials, and I'm liking them. I don't expect it'll show up very much in the brown so much as with other colors, but with the other colors, there's this neat sort of effect you get where you can see the gray of the graphite and also flecks of the pigment. Oh yeah, it is happening here a little bit too. It results in very desaturated, moody colors, which are nice. It's almost like the sepia, but a little bit more gray because of the graphite. Let's see what it looks like when it's water activated. Definitely a little warmer. Like some of the brown is really shining through. Okay, now as far as water-soluble utensils go, I have just a couple things left. These first two things here are called Derwent Art Bars, and they are a wax sort of crayon that is water-soluble. And again, this is one of those things where I picked up a few to experiment with. My local art store had some on clearance, and so I just picked up a couple of each sort of hue family to experiment with. They're interesting. Hard to get precision. They're kind of chunky. But I think they're meant to let you get big, wide strokes and expressionistic mark making and stuff like that on your pieces. The Caran d'Ache brand also makes a version of this called Neocolors, the Neocolor 2s. They're water soluble, and I prefer those to these. I find them much nicer. Okay. So it again has warmed up a bit in color.
feels a little like a dusty brown or something now. Okay, and this other one here, which I have broken because I am heavy-handed, is, oh, did I tell you the color of this one? I don't think I did. It's A53 Cocoa. And this is A52 Raw Umber. I am used to raw umber being more like what this looks like when it's in its solid form here, this dark, almost greeny brown. This is very warm for a dark umber. Or a raw umber. It's more like a burnt umber. Wait, no, yeah, it says raw. It's also very crumbly. I don't know if you can see it, but it's crumbling all over my page. It was even warmer and yellowier once I activate it with water. Not at all what I know of raw umber to be, but that is okay. So I have one last water-soluble thing here, and this is similar to the graphite pencil, except for this is called graphite, and it is the same thing in that it is a water-soluble graphite tinted with color. And this one is also called raw umber. And these are really big and chunky. So I'm having a hard time actually coloring here. They're very dry and chalky. I believe they're meant so you can do like big, wide, expressive, chunky marks in a piece. I'll have to experiment with them that way at some point. I'm not doing a very good job at getting a gradient here. It's kind of difficult to control. Super chalky. Yeah, see, this is much more raw umber than this. And they're both by the same company. Still a little bit warm for a raw, and actually, yeah. Meh. Okie dokie, moving along. What shall we do now? I think I will do inks. I have 3 inks. I'm going to need to get something to put underneath this paper. I have 3 inks, 2 drawing inks and an acrylic ink. So we'll start with this first one here, Winsor Newton drawing ink. It's nut brown. It's very transparent. I don't believe these are meant to be used like I'm going to use them right now, brushing them on. I believe that they're meant to be used as like with a dip pen for lining and stuff like that. But that is not how I'm going to use them today. I do know that these inks like immediately soak into this paper. Like, I don't know if it's showing up in camera, just instantly it's gone. But it is a warm brown. It sinks right in, so you don't have any chance to get a gradient. I think if you're using a paper that is maybe not quite as absorbent and you get the paper wet first, then you probably have the ability to get more of a gradient with it. Okay, the next one is walnut ink, walnut drawing ink, and this is Tom Norton's original light fast, water soluble, acid free drawing ink. And I got this to play with, I think, with my glass dip pen. But I haven't used too much of it yet. This one's sitting on the surface of the paper a little bit longer. Okay, last ink. This is an acrylic ink, and so it's acrylic paint, but in a very thin ink form. Needs some shaking. Needs more shaking. Still needs more shaking. Well, that'll do. So it is an acrylic paint, so once dry it's permanent. It can't be lifted back up or reactivated with water again like these other ones can. These two, well, this one for sure is permanent. I don't know about this one, but it's that acrylic plastic, you know, it's acrylic, so it's plastic based. This color is sepia, and it's a black, a brown, and a black, a red, and a yellow pigment. So we've got black 7, red 112, and yellow 1:1. This is very green, very greeny for a sepia, or yellowy, I guess, but it's a greeny yellowy color. But I got these to do some like old school tattoo flash designs with. That was a cool effect. Sorry, I got that color to do that with. Okay, now let's just move right on straight to the watercolors. I have a few watercolors here. All of these are a mix of Winsor Newton and Daniel Smith. And the first one here that I'm gonna swatch, it's not technically a brown, it's technically a white, but I decided to put it on the sheet because it's sort of a warmish white, like maybe the lightest brown you possibly could get. But its pigment information is pigment white 6:1, buff titanium. I get a little separation in there. This is a great color to have for mixing when you're working on like beachy scenes with sand and stuff. You can also use it mixed with other colors in portraiture. Obviously on its own it might not be ideal, but when you mix it, it's pretty good. Okay, next we have a Winsor Newton color, and it is burnt sienna. Excuse me, and its pigment information is pigment red 101. Burnt siennas are usually a pretty sort of orangey reddy brown. Don't normally, like this is not normally how you would do a watercolor. You don't take it right off the tube and put it on the paper. Normally you would put some on a palette and mix it with some water a bit. But I don't want to mess around with the palette right now because I'm just doing tiny little squares. It's very warm, orangey red. I really do like it. And burnt sienna, Payne's gray are beautiful together. They're beautiful mixing. They mix into this beautiful neutral gray. So when you do watercolor paintings with the two colors and just let them sort of mingle with each other at certain places, you get a beautiful range of colors. Okay, next we have a Daniel Smith color, and this is transparent red oxide. And I think it's the same pigment, yet PR 101. This one I think is a bit darker. That is way too much paint. You must have water. So yeah, it's very similar, but it's darker, and it's also more pigmented. I find a lot of Daniel Smith's colors do seem to be more pigmented than the Winsor Newton ones, or at least some of the Winsor Newton ones. You get much more intenseness out of a lot of the Daniel Smith ones. Okay, this is a strange color to me. I've never really used it too much, but it's all these older these watercolors that I have, they're older. I bought a package of used, like barely used watercolors off of eBay quite a few years ago. And so all these colors, all these old Winsor Newton colors came with that. And this one's called Brown Matter, Pigment Red 206. It's technically a red. And even when I paint it out, you'll see it's quite reddish, but it's also still quite brownish. So here it is with my browns. I've not used it in any like mini paintings yet because I haven't figured out what to use it for. See, it's very red. But also, if you were to put this with the reds, it would feel very brown. Okay, this is a color that probably many people are familiar with. This is Van Dyke Brown. This is one of the Winsor Newton colors. It is Pigment Red 101 and Pigment Black 6, which I don't think is a true Van Dyke, now that I'm thinking about it, but I'm actually not sure what the true Van Dyke color is. But Van Dyke Brown, if you are familiar with a guy named Bob Ross, it was the brown he always had on his palette. And it's also a pretty standard brown for not most, but a lot of artists' palettes. And it is a nice, rich, dark, pretty neutral brown. It's a good color to mix if you're trying to mix rich blacks and not use like a tube black. Having a little bit of Van Dyke Brown helps to deepen most mixed colors. Okay, now I've got another Winsor Newton here, and it is Burnt Umber. And it is a multi-pigment color, and it is Pigment Brown 7, Pigment Red 101, and Pigment Yellow 42. I believe that says. Another dark brown. It leans a little bit more to the yellows than the Van Dyke, the Van Dyke's pretty neutral, which is why I think it's pretty common on palettes. For mixing a dark, it doesn't lean too much one way or another, so it's easy to use when mixing with other colors. Okay, I've got one tube left. And this is a Winsor Newton as well, but this is their Cotman watercolors, which is their student grade. And I don't know if at one point in time I had a Cotman set or what, I don't know. But I have this sepia, and I also have a mauve, I think, which obviously wouldn't be in this palette. And its pigment is, holy crap, that's some small text. I believe it is Pigment Brown 7 and Pigment Black 7. It's really frickin' small. So sepia is another one. If you're looking for sort of a dark neutral to have on your palette, you could do sepia instead of Van Dyke Brown. Because again, it's a dark color that doesn't necessarily lean to red or yellow, you know, in any direction. Pretty neutral and quite dark. A little bit of a messy square there. There we go. Okay, I technically have two watercolors left, but they're not your typical watercolor. This first one is a watercolor, but it's a Daniel Smith watercolor stick, and they have a few of their colors available in these stick forms. This is one of their Primatech colors, the Hematite Genuine, so its pigment is just genuine hematite, and you can, if you want to, scratch on your page with it, but they're not really made to work this way, so you'll see when I'm doing it, it's not really, like, it's really dry, and it's not, it didn't really work very well. And then even when I try to go over it with the water, like, it does activate a little bit, but really not that much. The way these are meant to be used is like a pan watercolor. So I actually buy these, I cut a chunk off, and I stick them in a little half pan in my palette. Because when you just use it with a brush off of there like this, you'll see it comes out much better. Now, hematite, it's almost a black, but it's a very warm black. And it's not a super duper strong color, but it is a nice color. It's granular. It's nice for tinting colors. You know, dulling colors out. Oh, I just splattered. I picked this. I think I may even have this one in tube as well, but I must not. Why would I have it in tube and stick? I mean, you never know. I might. But yeah, it's definitely pretty gray, but it's a warm gray. Okay, now this next one here is Winsor Newton Pro Marker Watercolor. I picked up two of these. I picked up this burnt sienna and another Payne's gray. Which obviously is not in this palette because I'm Payne's gray, of course. But I have not really figured out why one would prefer to work with these. I just picked up a couple to try. And this is my first try actually trying it on watercolor paper. Now, this is a very, very smooth hot press paper, so I don't know if this is a good reference of how these are supposed to work. I did try it on a different paper, like a multimedia paper, and I drew in, and then when I tried to water activate it, like, nothing happened. It didn't really water activate. So hopefully it will here. But yeah, this is burnt sienna, and it is pigment red 101. I did learn that if you have these, don't store them this way or this way. Store them flat, because the color will pool down at one end or the other, and then when you go to use it, it's kind of a funny color. But there's a bullet tip and a brush tip, and it's just it's like a felt brush tip. It's not a bristle brush tip, but it's definitely a burnt sienna. Now let's see. Oh, please work. See, it's a little disappointing. Isn't that just a little anticlimactic? Anyways, like I said, I haven't really figured out, like, it's supposed to be a watercolor, and as far as I knew, that's supposed to be how you use them. But I don't know. Maybe somebody watching can tell me how these are supposed to be used. Maybe I'm just doing it wrong. It worked a little bit better when the paper was already wet, but even still. So that is it for the watercolors. I do have one last water-soluble art supply, and that is some gouache. And I have a set of Winsor Newton gouache, and it did not come with a brown. So I picked up this Grams burnt sienna to sort of balance out the palette and have that nice mixing color. Gouache is a medium that I love the look of it, and the people who paint with it really well do an amazing job, and I'm always so impressed, and I want to do it too, but I just haven't. The learning curve for me it's not the best. But gouache is it's kind of like watercolor, but it's very opaque. Some people say it is an opaque watercolor, but it's a little different. And it's not actually meant to use completely 100% out of the tube. It is meant to be mixed just a little bit with water to give yourself a nice, like a thick cream texture. and then that will allow the pigments to flow nicely and settle nicely. But you can also thin it out with water like you would with a watercolor to get a lighter wash. Okay, sorry about that. My camera, I'm filming on my phone, and apparently I ran out of storage and I didn't notice. But you saw me swatching out the gouache was the last one. And then you missed, I started with my Copic markers. And this dark one here is E39 leather. And this one here is E13 light suntan. And I was explaining that I used to be into really experimenting with Copic markers or Copic markers, but kind of got out of it, but I still have a handful of them. And so I'm going to add them to this swatch chart. I like the idea of using these as like a base coat and then putting maybe colored pencil on top of them for detail and texture. That's a technique I'm going to experiment with in the future. But moving down here, I've got E33 sand. Does anybody have sand this color where they live? We don't have a whole lot of sand here, and the sand that we do have is definitely very gray. The next is E00 skin white. I would have called that like a light peach, but that's just me. And E000, which is called pale fruit pink. That is most definitely pale. I can't think of what fruit pink this might be from. And there you have it. Let's get this out of the way. There are all the browns. Not as boring as one might think. That's quite a variety of hues. Looking at it. You can zoom in here and get a closer look. Okay, starting with the colored pencils up at the top. These are the two graphitints, and you can't really see too much. You can see the shininess of the graphite, but you can't see too much the different sorry, this was the only graphitint, wasn't it? You can't see too much the difference between the graphite and the pigment in this one. And the art bars and the inks. Sorry if you can hear my dog whining in the background. She's ready for dinner. Splattered. This was my failed attempt at that watercolor marker. I'm gonna have to look up how you're supposed to use them, because. And here's the Copic markers.
So I hope you enjoyed that look at all my brown art supplies. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching. Leave a comment, let me know. Are you a brown lover? Is it one of those colors that you always tend to gravitate to? So again, thanks for watching, and wherever you are, I hope you have a great day. And until the next one, bye-bye.